So we'll open it up for some discussion with PSB members. Is there anything that you'd like to ask COPE or discuss with COPE as a result of our letter? Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Through you to COPE. First of all, Coper, hello. I know COPE on a personal basis as well. Been a while, buddy. Good to see you. I guess my biggest question here, Cope, and one of the biggest concerns we had as a police services board is the fact that, and don't get me wrong, it's very unfortunate what's happened to Ed, but it just brings to light again the fact that it's really only the two of you guys that are really holding this together and running the show, so to speak. Has there been any discussions within the group itself, as we requested in our letter there, of expanding the board and bringing more people on? So like I say, don't get me wrong, it's a terrible what's happening with Ed here, but it just brings to light the fact that now you're kind of stuck there, not knowing what's going on, not knowing the minutes and what he was thinking about saying and stuff like that. Has there been any discussion within the board itself prior to our ask about expanding? And part B of that, with just the two of you, more or less running the show, do you feel that there's things that have been, dropped off or maybe not given the priority that they should have been given?
Well, thanks, John. First of all, there are 3 members of our board, which is myself, Ed Darris, and Troy Hearn from Brant County Towing. When this group originally started off, and as Mayor Bailey can attest to, there was a lot of circumstances that happened to lead up to what we have here, with the county not having any kind of a tow association in place, and there was some things that happened within the town here with certain tow companies that caught the council's attention. And we had an individual who approached the town and said, oh, we have a group in place that we can have this association look after this fact. And I won't get into too much detail of that because that is past. But anyway, with that, what happened was they had taken a number of names off of that list and disqualified us because they didn't want us on it. So as Mayor Bailey can attest to, we fought for 4.5 years for equality. And we knew the corruption that was on the other side. And it was only Ed and I that started this process. When we knew that we were going to get approved by the county, when we got approved, we had asked Troy Hearn from Brant County Towing if he would join our force so that there would be 3 of us on the board, just for legal purposes. And once our group got going, we started to get different companies that were on the previous association wanted to step on board. And we had some that were on that association that was with the old corrupt system, and we knew how they operated. And that was the only reason that we kept control of it, because we didn't want this to go south like the other group did. So I have had discussions with Ed in the past about expanding our group. And Ed was always fearful that if we expanded it, we do have some troublemakers out there, and we don't want problems with the county or the Police Services Board to get these people on. So since our last meeting that we had with Mr. Brown and Jennifer, I've had some discussion with Ed and asked and said to him that maybe I think we should put it out on the floor to the members. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to have any meetings with them in the last year because of COVID. And some of them aren't even set up for Zoom. So it was pretty difficult to do. But I suggested to Ed, maybe we should reach out. I don't know where it's going to go, because as we know, Ed's not in great health. Hopefully he's here with us for a long while yet, but we don't know. And I even suggested to him yesterday that come the end of this term, which is December the 31st, that we have a complete new board, myself included, Ed included, that we step aside. Troy is still there from the old group and who we brought on board. But, and I know we're not saviors, but it kind of worries me a little bit when I know the people that are left back on there and the issues that they have created for our group and how they operate, that it's really not in a positive way when you're dealing with the county or the police services board. We're not a sophisticated group. And basically the only thing that we are is we're trying to keep the checks and balances, that's all, and keep things trying to run in a smooth place. Yes, we have some small issues. We're going to have small problems. There's nothing that runs perfect. But overall, I think our group has performed pretty well. We have added a new company, Aggressive Towing, who we were reluctant at first because of some of the connections he had with other companies. We have had companies that have tried to get on that aren't based in our county, which we've already debunked that they don't qualify. But going forward, we've lost Jarrett Towing. So we do have our existing companies. I sold my company. I don't have any ties with any towing company at all. I just stayed on in the last 2 years of retirement, only to try to keep things running smoothly. So from here on, I don't know where it's going to go from there. But as of this point, when this term runs, we will have a new group of people that will look after this. I don't know, I can't speak for Ed, but as far as myself is concerned, I'm going to step aside and somebody new will be in there. But to have more than 3 people, I don't think it's necessary. Like I say, we even financially, we haven't collected any monies from any of the towing companies for the last couple of years. And like I say, we're doing is trying to keep the ship going in the right direction. And if there's issues, we try to deal with the issues. And as Sergeant Hampson can relate, that he does email back and forth with us. I have spoken to him in the past. So that's where we stand.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, and like I say, it's good that the discussions have been had. If you feel that 3 people on the board is sufficient to keep it going, and it's not too much work for each one of them, then maybe that's the way to go. I'm not sure. I guess the only caution I would throw out there is the fact that with pretty much stripping down, the vast majority of the 3. Well, if 2 of the 3 were to leave and 2 new come in, that might not be the best case scenario either. But anyway, I'll just leave it at that. Thanks for your time.
I look at the number of tow companies in the area and the number of representatives that we have. I think 3 is sufficient. It's not like if 2 new ones come on there, it's not like they're new to the industry. My question is who would they be? Because of all the companies, but if you take like Mike Cadger from Ken's Towing, like he's been around a long time. He's a pretty good guy. He's got a pretty level head. the other fellows are like, everybody's getting older. Like, I don't know who else they would put, but I think 3 is far more sufficient. And the other reason you keep 3 on board, it just keeps everything honest. Just keeps everything honest, that you don't have one person making the decision on anything. It's usually at least 2 of you that are making decisions on it. Sometimes all 3 of us are on the same page. Sometimes there's only 2 of us on the same page, but I think 3 is sufficient for this group. Like I say, we're not sophisticated. We're at big time. All we're doing is trying to keep the ships sailing in the right direction. And if there's issues that arise, that, you know, we get contacted and say this and this happened, and we try to take care of it.
Okay. Thanks, Cope.
No problem.
Mayor Bailey, you had a question for Cope?
Yeah, hi, Cope. First of all, please take back our best greetings to Ed from myself and the entire Police Services Board. I hope he's feeling better. He's had a long battle, so tell him we're thinking about him. Anyway, Cope, maybe this reformation of your new board might be, I don't know if you remember, but when we were in discussions about forming boards, I had suggested that maybe all your board members were not tow truck drivers, and that maybe you need an accountant or a paralegal or somebody else in your board that has nothing to do with towing, that can bring an objective opinion to your board. And this might be a good time when you're forming your new board. And you said Tom Hutton's gone from Jarrett's, you said that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe this would be a good time for you to ask a couple of people from the community to sit on your board, so that it helps you where you're weak in your association or your board. And I would think a bookkeeper or someone who takes records, or someone, even a paralegal, as I said, that can give you a little bit of advice when you're sort of falling off a cliff. And this would be a good time to rejig your board, I think, and make it more versatile, and maybe give you a little bit more teeth when you come forward for the next contract, if the Police Services Board decides to carry on working with you and through you. So just a thought, this would be a good time to do it. So nice to see you again. Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you. Just
Member
if I
Brown?
may,
Oh, sorry, Cope, go ahead.
just if I may, real quickly, you know, I think that's a great idea to try to reach out to somebody that isn't even affiliated with any towing company of any kind. I'm not anymore. I don't have any affiliation with Copers, but I think my time has served. I've enjoyed working with everyone, you know, past board. I haven't had any issues. To try to find somebody that would come on board with you, because it's strictly voluntary. Like, we don't draw any monies from any of this. In Ed's case, in my case, we have our own money stuck in here that we've never recouped, but that doesn't matter. And so to try to find somebody that would be willing to volunteer their time and stuff like that, that might be a challenge, but we're more than willing to try that. And like I say, I want to see this group move forward. I would like to see them move forward. I would like to see that we can carry on without problems. I'd like to see some of the companies behave a little better, you know, but we can only do so much with our part. But I will definitely discuss this with Ed, and like I say, I hope he stays around with us for a long time, but you know, he's a trooper, and I was out to see him last week, and I don't know, I'm fearful. So thanks.
Member Brown?
Good morning, Cope. Nice to see you again. I appreciate your update since our last meeting. We had discussions at the end of the meeting around your corporate documents. You're saying the contract's expiring on the 31st of December. When is it that you guys normally have your annual general meetings so that you would be electing your board?
Normally, we had them usually try to get them in February, but it's whenever, you know, Ed, we never ever had a particular date, but now with this, you know, we in the past, we never ever thought about changing the leadership, and I explained why. because we were always fearful because we didn't want this to go south. We knew the troublemakers that were on there or the complainers that were on there and how they acted in the last group. And with this being as close to Christmas as possible, the only thing I can suggest to Ed is that I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but suggest to Ed that we put it out on to all members of our group. And I don't know how many of them are equipped with doing virtual meeting, but at least we have a telephone that we can reach them. I should mention though, we did have a meeting scheduled during the summer months, just before the summer when this COVID all started, and they canceled our building on us. So they said we couldn't meet anymore. So that sort of put a kibosh on that. But I would think that between now and December, it might be a little quick, enough time, but we will do our best to accommodate one way or the other. I mean, I'll stick around until they have a new one in place anyway. Do that.
Cope, I guess my thoughts are that it's something that probably you shouldn't be thinking about. It's something that I would assume would be dictated in your incorporation documents. And that's something that I thought that you guys were going to refer to see when your elections were to be held and how it was to be conducted. That's still something I'd be interested in, and it may help you out as to your path forward as well.
We are going to do that, okay? We are going to do that. We definitely are going to do that. We have looked through our contract again and fine print that, and it is in there. It is in there, so, but we definitely will do that.
And I'd just like to add to Councillor Pierce's and Mayor Bailey's comments that I think if you can bring in different areas of expertise to your board, that everybody would benefit from that. And I know volunteers are sometimes hard to find, but you might be surprised who may offer to help if you ask.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And please pass on our best to Ed.
I will definitely do that.
Any other discussion or questions for Cope at this time? We will talk about our follow-up to this later on the agenda as well, but while Cope is still here, is there any other questions? Or seeing none? Cope, echoing everybody else, for sure, we appreciate you coming in, and it's trying times for you personally and for the Brant Towing Group with Ed's health, and we do extend our best wishes to everybody and hope that that he is well. And let us know how we can keep communicating moving forward on this. It's in both of our interests to see some positive resolution from all of this. So just reach out to Adam or Nancy to let us know how we can keep the lines of communication open through this process and transition time.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just like to reiterate that I'll take these suggestions on, that Mayor Bailey and Councilor Brown. I want to stress to you that if you have any other recommendations for us and for our group, that we'd be more than willing to look at them, and if it works, then we'll do that. We always enjoyed working with you. I think it's a good thing for the county to have something that is organized to sort of look after the tow group here, because I would hate to see this area go to first available, which other counties are trying to get away from. I know they were trying to get away from the Caledonia area. I know they were trying to get away from in the Oakville and Burlington area, because I had someone reach out from that area to me, wanted a copy of our contract, because they said that the OPP were we're looking at wanting to have something like that in place instead of the first available, because we don't want a problem like they got in the Toronto and the big greater GTA area here. The only thing I really worry about here, even though I'm not involved in the business anymore, I really worry about that here, that we get a lot of outsiders from outside the county. We got guys sitting on the highways and just chasing. And like I say, I do know, like, we've got a couple in our group that go out there and chase once in a while, and we certainly don't condone that. We don't want that. We have dealt with this last issue that Sergeant Hampson brought to our attention, and that has been dealt with, and we are very strict on it. So just for the future, I certainly hope that we'll still be able to work with you and carry forward what we started here, and we've had a lot of help along the way. Mayor Bailey was very instrumental in doing a lot of the legwork in the past when this all started taking place, and I have to commend him for that and thank him very much. And I really thank people from even past boards that we worked with. But when I say I'm going to step aside, I might step aside as a board member as far as making decisions, but that's not saying that I'll step. I don't and if I was in another capacity, that if they ever wanted to reach out to me for different advice of that, I'd still stay in touch, stay with them. It's just, I think it's time that we get some fresh blood. We do get some fresh blood, and maybe these people that we were so worried about in the past, maybe they won't be so bad in that capacity, but because they've been with our group for a few years now, so maybe that will help with a little bit of the thinking, because a lot of the way people act is leadership at the top, what people will allow and what they won't allow. So anyway, with that, if you have any other questions, I'd be more than willing to answer them.
Well, Cope, thank you so much for coming and speaking to us today. We will follow up with you if there's any other questions or discussions that we may have later on the agenda. But thanks for all you're doing to make sure that there's a smooth transition with all of this, and your efforts are really appreciated. So thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. And as soon as I get all the stats and I get to, hopefully Ed comes home and I get that, I will certainly pass it on right away and send it to you.
Thank you very much.
Whether I get a hold of Adam Crozier to pass it on, or Heather or somebody, I will get it to you.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Coper. Looking forward for a ride in that new car there, buddy.
You like that, eh?
I do.
Thanks a lot. Okay, Heather.
Okay, great. Have a good day, Cope.
You bet.
Take care.
Have a great day.
So we will circle back on some of the discussions later on the agenda, but right now we have Acting Staff Sergeant Peter Marshall with the OPP Municipal Policing Bureau. That's quite a mouthful. Joining us to talk about the 2021 OPP annual billing statement, which we've all received in advance. Peter will let you take it over from here and open up the floor for your discussions, and then some follow-up questions perhaps from the board. Nope, you're just on mute right now.
There we go.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Your Worship. So essentially, I didn't prepare any sort of a presentation. I just figured probably the best, if you wish to discuss the annual billing statement, it'd just be more of a Q&A would probably be the best way to go about this. I have received some questions in advance, so perhaps what I'll do is I'll just quickly go through those questions, and then if there's any follow-up questions, then we'll address those as well. If that does that seem workable for everybody? Okay, perfect. So I just pull those up. Like the first question that I had received was in regards to, it was the explanation of the FTEs. So if, do you folks have your annual billing statement in front of you? Because perhaps what I will do is I will go back and just pull that page up here. So I believe it was on page 4 of 16 in the annual billing statement. And the question that was raised was just in regards to the FTEs, says how does the equivalent of 87.76 FTEs that they're excluding from work compared to what we have in brands? We have less than that, but overall, do you work with detachments with less FTE? So I'm thinking perhaps there may just be some confusion in how that is worded. These FTEs that they're talking about here, it's provincial average of FTEs conducting municipal work. So what we do is we'll take a 4-year average of the FTEs from all detachments under the OPP who follow the billing model. So there are some areas, if you happen to have a recently disbanded police service, a good one at this point would be, say, in your close to your area in West Region would be the Wingham Police Service. So there'd be a portion where they're still actually under a transition contract, but not under the billing model per se at this point. So what they do is they take the 4-year average of all the FTEs from all detachments, they then remove the provincial portion. So these are areas of policing that are not captured under the billing model itself. It's captured as what they would consider a provincial services number as far as the calls for service go in that respect. So it's based on the municipal provincial split percentages from the deployment model. So at that point, the provincial services usage, or the PSU, is then removed. So Brant's portion of the 87.76 FTEs, again, that's across the province. That's not related to Brant itself, with the exception of 1.44 FTEs. So that's your portion of that 87.76. So the breakdown of the FTEs for Brant would be, so 4-year average, Brant has an average of 55.99 FTEs. The provincial removed equals 18, and the PSU, or provincial services usage removed, is 1.44. So the FTEs included this equals out to be 36.55. So that's what works out for your billing portion itself. So it's not the 87.76. That's a provincial number. Does that kind of clear that question up? Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair, through you. So that makes it a little clearer for me, because I think I was the one that brought that question up. So in essence, the 87.76 is just a provincial average. I get that. It goes on the 4-year average of the specific municipality. I get that. Where I'm a little confused here is the provincial, like, where does that 18, how is that 18 you spoke of made up that we reduce off that? Sorry, you may have said that, but it didn't quite click with me. So we got the 55.99, which is the 4-year average for Brant, and then the provincial removal of 18. I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand how that was made up.
That would be the average of the FTEs that would make up any provincial component, I guess you could say, for your detachment area. Right, so you're not being billed for any provincial work out of the Brant County detachment, right? So you'd remove that as well, and then of course the provincial services usage as well. So okay. Your FTE count for your billing now, and keep in mind, I mean, you're not being billed per FTE, right? Like it's based on calls for service.
Right. Yep, I get that.
Right. Yeah. So, but the FTEs that fall underneath the municipal billing portion of that would be the 36.55.
Okay, I got that. Can you just give me an example of what this the provincial, like the
Sure.
deduction?
If you could have something like, say, your emergency response team members, you may have those members working out of a detachment, for example, right? So that's a provincial component that you would not be billed for. You may have members of the detachment conducting work related to, say, speed or traffic enforcement on a provincial highway.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
So there's, it's not so much the body that you're looking for, it's the amount of hours that make up an FTE, right? So each FTE goes on under the average of 1,417 hours per year. So what we do is we take the total amount of hours and it's broken down into like an FTE number. So it's not so much, these are the FTEs and that's what you have. It's the hours that are being utilized are broken down into FTEs to kind of simplify it, to make it a little more explainable, I guess, when you're looking at, well, here's how many hours you received, or here's how many FTEs worth or hours of FTEs have been applied to your local detachment that you're currently not being billed for, if that kind of makes sense.
Okay, it does. If I could, Madam Chair, just a quick follow up on that. Okay, so is that 18? Is that across all detachments, so to speak, or is that specific?
No, this
to
is
Brand?
this is specific to Brand.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my last one here, if I could, at what point? So you said, was it 1,470 hours for an FT? At what point is it like, if all of a sudden they're clocking 1,500 or they're 1,450, at what point do you add an FTE? So at what point would we go from 55 to 56 type deal? Who makes that call as to when another FTE is required for that specific branch, municipality, detachment?
Yeah, well, those would be discussions that would be had between the detachment and regional command, right? So they address any staffing pressures they may have, right? So if they require more bodies, if it looks as though maybe some bodies should be removed and reallocated elsewhere, those are all conversations that take place, or discussions take place between the detachment and the region itself. So.
Okay, so just
that doesn't come through our bureau. So we in our bureau, we don't make any of those decisions. That's all operational in nature.
Okay, so where I was getting at, my apologies for going on here, where I was getting at, is that from the overall Western region, for example, in our case, it would look down and go, okay, so you know what, this detachment's got X amount of hours, we need to look at adding an FTE, or would it come from the detachment to Western region in our example here to say, hey, you know what, we're pushing out a ton of overtime here, our hours are up, I'm just trying to understand where that discussion would be initiated from. Is it from the detachment up or region down?
Yeah, and that may be a question that the inspector may be the answer, because again, I don't know how the conversations would take place, who would initiate what. It could be from either side, just depending on what the information is that's come forward to begin these discussions, right? It could be.
Pete, I can put some input on that as well, Madam Chair, if I go through you. Keep in mind that the OPP is a provincial entity. So it's between the commissioner and the provincial government as to what our budget is dictated for the provincial government. So that really dictates how many FTEs that we have organizationally. West Region itself is provided a certain number of resources for the workload that is in West Region. It's then up to the regional commander to decide how many resources, what the percentages of that breakdown are for each detachment to do the workload. I think what you're thinking, kind of, Councillor Pierce, is if the calls for service go up, we should get more officers. But the issue is that's between the commissioner and the provincial government as to how many resources that we have. So at the regional level, our chief has a certain number of resources that he has to draw on to deploy to different detachments. So they will, not on a regular basis, there's no timelines, but they will reassess if the workload all of a sudden goes up in a detachment workload per officer. Then they will reassess if they need to deploy. A workload may go down in another detachment, up in another detachment. Then the regional commander has to look to see if we now move resources. The other issue with that is we're always looking at more efficiencies to decrease the workload on the front line, such as we've seen with the 911, the provincial communications are, I can't remember the stats offhand, but they're in this package. I think by this time last year, we had responded to 900 911 calls. And I think we're right around 100 so far for this year. And that's all because of efficiencies that are trying to be done to deal with calls for service that don't necessarily require that frontline officer response. Our frontline support unit that we have, which is other administrative members that take on calls for service away from the front line. So it's not just the calls for service, it's the efficiencies and everything that we have as well, and that workload per officer that's looked at. But that is continually monitored at a regional command level. Okay. And then if the OPP as a whole requires more staffing, then that's discussions between the commissioner and the provincial government and the Treasury Board as to what they are going to provide additional resources to the OPP. Okay. If that clarifies it at all.
Yeah, again, I was kind of clear on it, but that's cleared up a lot for me. So I appreciate appreciate that. Thank you.
Member Brown.
Through you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you giving us this overview this morning. Can you just explain to me how you arrive at 1,400 hours for an FTE as opposed to approximately 2,000? There's a difference there, and I'm just not sure why.
The 1,417 hours is an average of what an officer would work during the course of the year, and that takes into effect taking holidays, say vacation out of that. You could have sick days taken out of that, stat days taken out of that. So all those numbers are put into place to establish what an average officer, like on average, what an officer works over the course of a year.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. If you'd like to move on to just some further questions. The next one that I received was, what is the provincial weighted time calculation? So how is it derived? So every officer has to, on a daily basis, enter in what's called a daily activity report. And so all of their activities that or calls for service that they answer during the course of the day, they record independently or individually, through the DAR, the daily activity report. And every officer across the province does that. And during that, when they enter those hours in, they have to enter in specifically what they did during the course of that day. So if they had a domestic dispute that they attended to, they would put in that they attended the domestic dispute, and here's the length of time that they attended that call for service for. And every officer across the province does that. And then what they do, or how these numbers are derived, is if you look in your annual billing statement, there's 9 billable working groups. And out of those 9 working groups, if you look farther down through your billing statement, they're actually all spread out as to what categories make up each billing group. And so all of those calls for service in there, or all the time that is spent in those calls for service, are lumped together, and then it's an average that is a 4-year average that is given to each working group. And so then that average is what provides a time standard, right? So if you were to look on your current billing statement, if we just look at the top working group for drug possession, and you'll see the calls for service count, and that gives each call for service in that specific category, or at least the average anyways. And so you get your 4-year average for drug possession of 59 calls for service. So out of all those 59 calls for service, each one had its own individual time. And those times will differ. You can attend I'll refer to it again, a domestic dispute. I may attend a domestic dispute, and I might be there for 15 minutes. I might be there for the next 5 or 6 hours, depending on what happened, right? So all those hours recorded, and then that is what gives us our provincial time standard of 6.5 hours. And that is applied to, then it's applied to all the calls for service underneath that billable working group for, say, drug possession, for example, right? And so then every call for service under that billable working group receives that same amount of time. Whether the officer spent 15 minutes there, whether they spent 6 hours there, right, or 20 hours, it doesn't really matter. They're still billed the same way. But it's all based on the average time that the officer spent investigating that call for service under those billable working groups. If that kind of makes sense for that question.
And Pete, through you, Madam Chair, if I can just, that's one officer as well, Pete, right?
That's right.
It doesn't account for 2, 3, 4, 5 officers that might be at the same call.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So all the time spent during the call for service, once it's recorded over the course of the year, it's averaged, and then they come out with that provincial time standard for that specific billing group, and then they all have their own time standard. If we work, come to the next question there. The source of the data on page 7 says that it comes directly from how our officers code their time, how much time is spent administratively. So yes, all of those calls for service, that's the breakdown of those billing groups. That does come from the billable calls for service that officers spend attend to. And so they provide all of the amount of time for grant itself under that category. However, the administrative portion, that's captured under your base cost. So if an officer spends 15 minutes, or if they spend the next 6 hours doing administrative work, that may not be, unless it's administrative work that is that goes along with an investigation that they're already looking into. Then if it's just administrative in nature and that is it, it's not related to a call for service, then that's just captured under the base. If it's administrative in the fact where they're doing their paperwork, their reports for a call for service that they've attended to, well, then that would get billed back to or added on to that call for service as well for time-wise.
And I just wanted to clarify as well that this is strictly billable hours and billable calls. It's not 100% of the workload or what our officers are doing, just to be clear.
Yeah, that's correct, Inspector. For the next one, so false alarms, and every municipality, they are doing their best to reduce false alarms. And so any false alarm or any alarm, any call for service that requires an officer to respond, the municipality will be billed for. So false alarms are under the bill of a billable category for a call for service. So that's the, you can have your false alarm warning issued, accidental trip, malfunction, others, or canceled. Now, I know one of the questions was, well, what makes up others? And that, unfortunately, I can't answer that. As an officer enters in what they did over the course of their day, and if they attended a false alarm and they choose other, then their discretion has allowed them to provide that, because it could be something they attended to that it just doesn't seem to be covered under any of the other groups that they can score their time to. So I can't answer that. I would have to possibly defer that back to the inspector, whether she would have an answer on hand or whether she'd have to look at it. In the end, it still comes down to, this is a billable call for service that an officer attended to, and you are still being billed for the same provincial time standard, because that underneath operational 2, as you're aware, if you look at your annual billing statement, the average time standard or provincial time standard is 1.3 hours for those calls for service. So whether it's a false alarm malfunction or a false alarm other, the billing itself is still the same. It's because it falls underneath the same working group. But it generally comes down to the discretion of the officer as to why they put down other, because it could just be that the other categories just don't really seem to fit the call for service that they attended to.
And Peter, I might be able to help with that. So, for example, our officers are aware that people do get charged for false alarms. Example might be a windstorm and a tree branch breaks and breaks somebody's window in their house. They have no control over that. It's accidental, but the officer may not want that person charged because it's not under their control. So it's like Peter said with that discretionary piece, that they may use categories such as that, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, Inspector.
Sorry, just before you go on there, through you, Madam Chair, if I could, with the other, do they have to elaborate on why they chose other, or it's just other? Like in the reports, can they, like, I'm just trying to, you know, and I totally understand, and I totally agree with the fact of, hey, if the look at the winds we had the other day, right? If it breaks something, alarm goes off, that type of thing. So is it just other, or do they have to go other and then because of blah 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 type thing? I'm just curious about that. No big if it dot.
Well, when they're scoring their DARs, it's just one category they have, right? So it's false alarm other, so they put their time and spent there.
Okay.
However, on the other end of that spectrum, they still have to complete a niche report, right? So they attended a call for service, and here's why, and this is what we did, and this is the outcome of it, right?
Okay, perfect.
So that's not recorded in the daily activity report. That's recorded in another database.
Okay.
This just allows them to say, this is what I did, and here's how much time I spent doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now there's a question about trends or whatnot in regards to numbers coming down. The best thing that I could probably suggest, because the question was how it's compared to other detachments. If you were to go on to opp.ca, just because the amount of information that's available at this on this chart, but if you went into opp.ca, in the search field you put in billing, you will see it's a 2015 to 2021 municipal costs chart. And this allows you to look at every municipality under the OPP across the province. It gives you their property count, it gives you the total cost of their annual billing, and it gives you their cost per property. So, and you would know better than I do as far as what municipality would be best suited to kind of rate yourself against, for lack of a better word. And but it gives you the breakdown, because every municipality is different, right? You'll have some municipalities where their cost per property are coming down. Some are actually going up. Some are staying the same. Some may fluctuate, and there's just a various reasons as to why that is. Population could be one. Calls for service could be one. Again, that's the whole purpose of the billing model, is to kind of take out those peaks and valleys. But so that would be my suggestion. It's because the website itself on opp.ca under the billing there's just a wealth of information in there, and generally does answer most questions that municipalities and PSB would ask when it comes to the billing. And it's not an exciting read by any means, but it is one that is it's a great takeaway to take back to your other board members. As a counselor, you can take back to your constituents. That way you're not living off. You can kind of correct the rumor mill that tends to go on out there. And so that would be my suggestion. Just take some time and look over that. There's so much information there that I'd be probably all day trying to go through it with you. But that is where I would get mine from.
That's great. That was one of my questions, and so I appreciate that, and I'll seek the advice of Councillor Pierce and Mayor Bailey as to what comparable municipalities would be. If I go online and search this up, like what would be a comparable size? You don't have to tell me right now, but maybe shoot me an email. I'd be interested to know how that works and how we compare.
Okay. And then as far as your bills going up, you know, if you're seeing some growth in your county, I mean, it can go either way. population comes up, it means that your property count goes up, which may mean you may have a bit more room to disperse your cost per property as well, because we update that annually through MPAC. So the numbers that we have will change every year. It's all based on MPAC information, right? So when we bill your municipality, we have the property count listed there, and we do get that from MPAC. So you'll see that number changes every year.
Sorry, that was just, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. That was one of my questions as well. So if we have more residents in the county, the billing amount doesn't change, but the cost per resident would be lower because you've got more people to spread that cost over.
Well, it might be. It might be. I'm not going to say that it's going to be, because your calls to service may go up too, right?
Right.
So it might kind of balance each other out. And then it comes down to how the municipality bills their properties too, right? So that is what the OPP charges the municipality for a cost per property. But how the municipality goes back and bills the residents, I don't know. Right?
So that was that's, I guess, a follow-up to Councillor Pierce's one of his questions further earlier. So as our county grows, which it is, and calls for service increase, I guess that's one of the questions I guess I'm leading into, is that full-time equivalent, how, and I understand from Inspector Anderson that that's a larger conversation, but you know, we want to ensure that there's adequate coverage for the growing county as well. If calls for service go up and if the demands on the detachment are increased, it's not necessarily reflective of the billing process model, but more of a discussion that Inspector Anderson has with regional and general headquarters then.
And Peter, I might be able to jump in there too. And that's a conversation that we've had actually recently in relation to base policing services. An effective and efficient service of delivery services, as opposed to enhanced contract options that a municipality has. So it's the difference between providing that base police service, and if the county requests additional services over and above that, that is an enhanced contract opportunity for that municipality to enter into with the OPP. Over and above that, if there's special things that municipality wants the OPP to deliver over and above base services. That'd be fair to say, Peter?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I guess where I'm, and I don't know that the answers today, but I guess just moving in my head is, at what point with the growth that we are seeing in the county, at what point, you know, does that trigger additional bodies on the full-time equivalent in terms of the base services, so that we aren't looking at enhanced contracts all the time? At some point, 55.99 full-time equivalents can't continue to do the work as we grow, and as the calls for services would assumably grow as well and increase.
And that was the discussion that we had just previously, right? So they look at workload per officer and the efficiencies that are able to take off the front line. So every day I get a report that shows me the workload per officer compared to Brant detachment to every other detachment within West Region. So that's something that's monitored every day. And then again, trying to balance that with the efficiencies that are being created for the front line to not respond to different things and decrease that workload at the same time, manage the calls for service. So the calls for service and the workload per officer would dictate those resource allocations, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. I do have another presentation in about 1 minute for South Bruce Peninsula, unfortunately. So perhaps if there's further questions, I'd be more than happy. If you want to email those to me, I'm more than happy to answer those for you. I wish I had some more time here, but unfortunately I have a presentation to provide. So
we really appreciate you joining us today to shed some light on the billing statement. It's never an easy thing to understand. Still learning as we go. I think there's also a seminar, a webinar about the the policing model in general and how it's calculated, if anybody's interested in participating.
Yeah.
Councillor
And-
Pierce, were you going to add something?
Yeah, just very quick, Madam Chair. I know he has to go. Mr. Mayor, I don't want to speak on behalf of entire council, but I'm thinking that maybe it would be worthwhile for you to kind of give this to our council as well. As I say, I can go back and discuss it with them as the mayor and I, but I think it would be a good presentation for our council to see as well. So there's always, and I don't mean questions in a, hey, what's going on here way, but just questions in a how is this all worked out as far as billing, because it's kind of a complicated thing, and I'm just throwing it out there that would you be willing to come and give this to our council?
Yep, absolutely. I've done it a few times in the past. So yeah, no problem at all. Yep. Yep.
And Councillor Pierce, through you, Madam Chair, we have done that on a yearly basis up until this point. I think last year was the first year that we hadn't done that, so that we would at the end of the year doing a billing presentation, and Peter would come out for that. So we're more than willing to continue with that if that's what County Council wishes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I would think that's a good idea. It's such a big chunk of cash for the citizens of the county. And sometimes they need to see the comparison, not only what we pay for you people, but the surrounding areas, the cities, what they pay for what they're doing with policing. And I think when they see the comparables as to what we're getting, what they're getting, what their problems are, what our issues are, they'll feel better after you've spoken. So yeah, whenever we can schedule that, I think our counselors just need to be able to sleep a little bit better at night. We've all got a lot on our minds lately, so I think it'd be great. Sooner the better.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So how do we want to record that action item? Nancy, you'll just note that Councillor Pierce and Mayor Bailey will have requested that, and council will coordinate directly with Acting Staff Sergeant Marshall.
Yes, we will do that. Thank you.
Well, we know you have to run to your next presentation. Nothing like having a day full of Zoom meetings, but good luck. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure it's not the last time we'll have questions for you in this complicated process. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
No, my pleasure, and no problem at all. Anytime. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Okay, so right now we have to have a couple of motions here with regards to our presentations and our delegations. The first one on the Brant Towing Group, we have a couple of options here. We have it coming up under 6A on the agenda, so we can have a motion to defer to discuss then as well at the same time as 6A. If there's no need for additional discussion, then we can also have a motion to receive the presentation for information. I suspect we have some discussion, but Mayor Bailey, yep. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
I can make that motion just to receive, please.
So we don't want to discuss this further under 6A as well?
After it's on the floor and has a seconder, I'd be happy to discuss it. We need a seconder?
Yes, I know. Okay, sorry. Councillor Pierce, are you seconding the motion to just receive for information?
At this point, yeah.
Okay.
Now we can talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about it. We're going to talk about it again under 6A, so I'm just not sure. Nancy had suggested that we could either defer or we could receive for information. If we receive for information, then we still can have it under 6A for agenda item and the discussion that came out of the delegation's presentation.
Right.
Nancy saying sure. Okay. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, so then Mayor Bailey's motion, seconded by John Pierce, is to receive the Brant Towing Group's delegation as received for information. All those in favor? Okay, carried. Second motion we would require is to receive the presentation from Acting Staff Sergeant Marshall on the OPP billing statement to receive for information. Anybody want to put that forward? Thank you, Mayor Bailey, seconded by Member Brown. All those in favor? That's carried as well. Thank you. So moving along then to the adoption of the previous minutes, we have minutes from October 20th and October 27th. seeking a motion to approve those minutes. Councillor
moved.
Pierce put it forward and seconded by Member Brown for both the 20th and 27th of October. All those in favor? Thank you, that's carried as well. Okay, now we're at 6A. So back to the towing contract. And you all have a copy of the letter that was sent to the Brant Towing Group as a follow-up from our last meeting's discussion that outlined our concerns and requests for information. We've also heard from COPE this morning and the situation that they're in. So looking to seek what you folks would like to do moving forward. Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair, through you. And I tried to, it's, as I said earlier, it's quite unfortunate what's going on with Ed, but that just really brings to light here what we were talking about with the board of directors as is. Personally, and I don't mean this as a bad thing, but I got nothing out of that, out of what Cope said, nothing that we didn't already know. To me, we're no further ahead than what we were going into this meeting, other than the fact of he's saying that he's spoken to Ed and him and Ed are going to step down, and I believe the other, is it Troy? I think that's what the other one, Troy or Trent, is going to stay on there. And I kind of voiced my opinion at that. The fact that it's great to get some new blood in there, as he said, but all of a sudden when you've got one remaining out of three, that could lead to troubles in its own right. Again, I'm worried about how this is going to go forward. I don't know. I don't really know what to say other than the fact that it's really brought to light the concerns we've had, and we're no farther ahead now than what we were. I don't know where we go.
Mayor Bailey, did you want to speak to that? Sorry, I thought you had your hand up.
No, I didn't have my hand up.
Okay, Member Brown then.
Through you, Madam Chair, can we ask Adam Crozier if he's had any further contact or the details of the contact, if it may benefit us at this point?
So asking Adam if he's had any follow-up from our letter, is that?
Yes.
Yeah, Adam, you're on.
Through you, Madam Chair. So I spoke with Ed after the letter was submitted to him. I think it was the Saturday after the board meeting. Sort of outlined the situation to him. He said he would work to get it. I tried to follow up with him last week to try and get a sense of where they're at, just to see, make sure that they were working on a response. And he said he'd call me, and then obviously he was dealing with some significant complications. So aside from what Cope provided today in terms of assurances, no, I haven't received any sort of anything formal in response to the letter.
Member Brown?
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that. Madam Chair, at our last meeting that we had with the Brantford Towing Group, our main concern at the end was that they show us that they're legitimized and that they're having their elections, so that they are a stable entity moving forward. That's my biggest concern right now, is that hopefully they can communicate with us what they in fact are supposed to be doing, and that they are doing it. So that we know that we have something positive moving forward, because I share some of the same concerns. I believe Troy is the vice president.
Yeah.
So he was looking to maybe spearhead into the future, but I would like to see them formalized through. I've got to believe they have an election process in their documentation, and that they're following it, so that we're dealing with a legitimate group.
And echoing, some of the concerns and comments, if the other members of the towing group place value and importance on this agreement, they would, should, and could step up, if needed. And Troy, I believe, is vice president, Jim, as you mentioned. And Cope's indicated he wants to step away as well. So, I have mixed feelings about this as well, given that the situation and the timelines that we're seeing, but also if this, what we heard was that this was of great value to them, that this was what kept the towing group aligned and functioning. And so if there's that value that, you know, Ed and Cope have done a great job to do, that it needs to be translated into the next generation, so to speak, in terms of the leadership and succession planning. And I guess what I'm wondering about with you folks is, we gave them some timelines in the letter. Obviously, Cope indicated he was looking for the stats from the call center, and he was going to forward those when he had them. We had some other information that we wanted some feedback on them on next meeting dates and how they were going to do things. Our contract with them still comes up for expiry December 31st. So how do you folks want to handle that, given Ed's precarious situation, and I guess Troy as vice president will have to step up somehow as well. I'm not sure, Adam, I'm not really sure where to go here, but do you have any insight into what our possible paths might be in terms of different options?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I mean, really, it depends on what the board wishes to do. If they wish to continue on with this arrangement, then, you know, I was reviewing your 2021 draft budget. You have a section in there for legal services. You know, if you have concerns about the state of the contract or want some advice, you know, obviously you have to find one, but some sort of temporary extension in the next year could provide you with some better answers from, you know, the direction of the towing group once they, you know, perhaps have an election of new executives. You know, aside from that, you know, I don't, not disparaging, but they're not they've never been really a sophisticated organization. You know, they've just really got stuff done. So if you're going to want some fuller answers and some better answers to their corporate documents, I think it's going to take them some time to get those arranged. And I think that's still going to involve a lot, you know, a lot of work from Ed, because I think he's taken that on personally. The one thing that did come to mind that I wanted to mention in terms of the corporate documents is I wanted to clarify that the reason they are a not-for-profit incorporated body is because we requested that they become one. They didn't do this on their own initiative. You know, I don't think they came up with the idea. You know, Mr. Bradley can correct me if I'm wrong later, but I believe the purpose of them becoming an incorporated body was so that they could enter into a contract, you know, not with a couple, you know, you weren't entering into a contract with Cope and Ed. You were entering into a contract with an incorporated body that could provide you with indemnification insurance, who, you know, had some sort of organization behind it, as much as, you know, I think they could provide. So, you know, aside from that, that's basically where I think things are at right now.
Thanks, Adam. Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, I think for sure we shouldn't have the contract expire on the day of their election. I don't think that's right at all. I think even if we extended it by 3 months, Adam said very well that they've never been a sophisticated group of people. They've tried very hard, and they've had 3 people that really wanted it to work. Without them, it's frantic. Frantic's a good word. You can look it up on the internet and Google towing in Toronto, and there's much stronger words. Even in Hamilton, there's much stronger words. Even on the reserve, there's much stronger words. I'll call it frantic. So without them, there's a whole set of problems that come with things without them. But if we give them an extension of 3 months, see how their election went. I'll call Cope again just on the side, and I'll give him a couple of names that I think of a couple of people that I think might be interested in serving on their board, or people like that, even if it's not the people I suggest. I don't know that he understands that most boards are volunteer boards. Most boards don't get paid. And so people that are interested in any subject matter are prepared to put in the time if they think it's worthwhile. So maybe they just don't know that. As I said, they're not as sophisticated as some people that have worked on boards before. So, but I hope we don't I hope we don't cancel their contract on the same day that their elections are being held. So my suggestion would be a 3-month extension to see how their elections went. If they went terribly, then we cancel it. If they went well and they're really trying and we see that they tried, maybe we can give it another go. I don't know. I just know how much work it's been to get here, and I know the havoc that it was before we had it. So
Yeah,
that's it.
good points. I like your suggestion as well, Mayor Bailey, about the extension and whether the next generation of this group can pull all that together is really incumbent upon them to do that with Ed's situation and Cope stepping away. So I think it's fair to give them some time to transition and see if they can come to the table. If they have the same philosophy as Ed and Cope do, that remains to, that they'll have to demonstrate that as well in terms of working with us collaboratively. So I do like that suggestion. Councillor Pierce, and then Member Brown.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I don't want to come across as a negative here, but my only concern here is there's been conversations with them for several months now. There's already been an extension. We've talked to them about, things that we feel that they should do. Again, it's brought to light that and this is just my own opinion here, folks, that's not happening. They're still running as far as I can see, they're running as one person, and that is Ed. And now that has got them into a situation where we had suggested to them that they need to provide us with some information. That hasn't been done. If in fact we are going to again extend this, my own personal feeling here, I'm not sure if I'm 100% for it, but if in fact that is the way we go, then I feel that we need to be a little more stern with them in the fact that it's not a, hey, can you? It's, you shall give us these documents by this time. You shall expand your board to 5 people. It's not any, we can't give suggestions anymore. It is, you're either going to do it like this for the betterment of everybody, or we're backing out. Again, that's just my feelings on it. But again, we're now, what is this, our 3rd extension? If we do it this time, this is going to be our 3rd extension. I appreciate the fact of the work they've done. I appreciate the fact of where where they've come from, where they are. But in the same sense, we're asking as a police services board that my understanding here is we could potentially be on the nut for some of this stuff, and they're not adhering to anything we're asking them to do. So if in fact we do go this route, it's no more, hey, can you? Hey, will you? It's no, you shall do this. If not, we're done.
Yeah,
sorry to be so blunt, but that's my feeling.
It's good to say it like it is sometimes. And I just want to clarify, just from my perception. So really, yes, we've extended it, but we haven't been in full communications with the branch. Well, I know the Police Services Board hasn't necessarily been in full communications with the branch towing group for all these extensions with respect to the specific issues. This has really come up since Member Brown and I met with them in September, and then it's kind of moved from there. So I know we've extended for other reasons, COVID and looking to redo some of the language, and now this, and so it's been a kind of a snowball effect per se.
Right, but sorry, Madam Chair, if I could, and I appreciate what you just said there, but the reality of it is there's been a contract in place for a number of years now, and they haven't done what's in the contract that they helped build. That's my biggest issue with this. Sorry.
Yeah, one follow-up to that then, Adam, is Troy is vice president. Has he taken any kind, like usually when the chair is not, the president's not available, the vice president steps in, or if that kind of thing. We see Cope today, but what's the expectations that Troy is going to be the next, be able to step in if Ed's not able to? The organization should still have some continuity, to Councillor Pierce's point.
Madam Chair, through my dealings with Troy, I've had to deal with him on a limited basis at times, and he seemed fully capable of taking up that mantle when Ed was unavailable to do so. So, I probably only dealt with him a handful of times on that point, but
okay, so he's not as active as the other two.
No, and I think obviously if it's a situation where Ed is not involved, it remains to be seen how his role is filled by the others.
Right. Member Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in agreement with many of the points that Councillor Pierce makes. There are concerns within the towing contract that we've raised for some time, and we have deferred them, hoping that they're going to get dealt with. But I also see that there are some benefits to the county and the people of Brant that are included in that. So I would like to see something positive come out of this. One of my concerns is that our letter dated to them asking for all this information was sent out on October 28th. So we haven't given them a lot of time to respond, especially in view of COVID and the health complications. If we are to extend it, I would definitely like to see a very tight timeline put on it. And Mr. Mayor, when you had stated that the contract was expiring the same day as their meeting, I don't think we ever got clarity from them when their annual general meeting is supposed to be or when their elections are to be. So I think that, you know, it could be the same date. I'm just not sure that it is. And I would like clarity if Adam can follow up with them and maybe send us back a response as to when they are supposed to have their annual general meeting and their votes, because they do need to get on track and legitimize so that they have the resources to move forward.
Mayor Bailey?
He did say today it was the end of December.
Yeah, I thought I heard that as well.
He may have said that, but I thought he said the contract expired at the end of December. I didn't hear that it was their corporate year end, but either way, I just like clarification on that so we know what we're doing.
Mayor Bailey?
Well, Nancy should be able to clarify that right now with her minutes. And I do believe they said their elections were that day. So I think 3 months is as much time as we should give them. I don't know that we should give them any less than 3 months. And it is Christmas, and Ed is truly in his last days of cancer. So these things are not trivial. They're not, this has been going on for like 8 or 9 years, and 3 more months after the Christmas, after the new year, is not a lot of time in perspective to the entire issue. So thank you.
Might I suggest that once they have a new executive in place, that you invite them to come to the board, and I think they can hear it, sorry for lack of a better term, straight from the horse's mouth, that they can hear exactly what your expectations are for them moving forward. And if they don't meet them, then they need to reevaluate how their situation is going forward. So I think that's probably the best suggestion if you wish to see a sort of a positive outcome past any sort of additional extension.
Okay, so how do we want to proceed here, folks, with the discussion? I'm hearing the idea of a 3-month extension to the contract, but with some specific feedback to the Brant Towing Group about timelines, succession planning, elections, additional information. I appreciate, Mayor Bailey, your point about Ed's situation and the gravity and the graveness of his condition. So that's going to be, I've had experiences with organizations that have depended on one person, and I've been the one trying to transition them, and it's a lot of work for the next person coming in after them to try and dig through and get to the bottom of things. So that's a tough job for whoever's going to do that after as well, to try and bring that up to date. So yep, Mayor Bailey.
You know what we might find out too is there's no appetite for this group at all.
Yeah.
Really, the people that were involved with this group, Ed and Cope and them, they were the three that really were seeing the injustice and the people being treated badly and the rough toughness of parking lot discussions. Maybe when they don't do it, and maybe no one will step up, and it won't even be a problem for us anymore. There's a very real chance of that happening, you know.
That's a good point as well, that they may cancel it on their own.
they may just fall apart. They might implode on their own. And if they do, too bad for tow trucking, but makes it much easier for our decisions moving forward. So I think that 3-month period between their elections, the end of our contract, the 3-month extension will tell it all. So whatever that story is, I think in 3 months from the first of the year, we'll know the story.
So to March 31st, Mayor Bailey, to extend the contract to March 31st?
April Fool's Day would be great. 1st of April.
Any other discussion? Anybody prepared to make a motion? Nobody's prepared to make a motion, so that'll make it difficult to make a decision. Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'll make the motion to get it on the table that we extend it to the March 31st with the statement in there that, you know, by the end of 2020, you shall have your, you know, board renewal, however you want to call it. And your board shall consist of more than 3 people. And then, you know, if you want to talk transition and stuff like that, even give them 2 months, give them to the end of February, which personally, I don't feel they need that long, but give to the end of February to have the information to us. And then that gives us a month to decide what we want to do. But I mean, as much as I appreciate the fact of, you know, this has been going on for 8 years. So this contract has been there for 8 years. It should be very simple for them to get all the minutes and all that kind of stuff, which part of me is thinking they don't even exist, which is, I hope I'm wrong with that. But like I say, I'll move to extend it to March 31st with the caveat that they have their elections completed by the end of the year, and they expand their board of directors, and they have the information requested to us by the end of February.
Seconder for that? Member Brown, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Okay, carried. Adam, you and I have some work to do again to communicate back with them with the direction of the board. And perhaps we might be able to include Troy in on those communications as well, just as a additional, so he's in the loop maybe.
Yeah.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Troy hasn't been in the loop with the communications thus far?
I'm not sure. I'm just saying, let's, as a VP, let's include him in the discussion as well. Like, I'm not sure if he has or hasn't been, because everything's gone to Ed as chair, right? So I don't know what Pope and Ed have done. Yeah.
Madam Chair, Ed Darris, as the president, is the primary contact for the towing group. It sounds like he is sharing this information with Cope and Troy, but that's his role as the president, is to be the primary contact. It hasn't been circulated to all 3 members of the executive. It's been directed to the president.
Are we comfortable including Troy moving forward then? Yeah.
I think it's a must.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, folks. Adam, I guess we'll recircle with you and Nancy to get some communications drafted, similar to the letter that we've, you know, already put together. So, okay. Thank you, everybody, on that. Okay, moving on to the agenda. Thanks, Adam, for joining us today. So moving on to our next section on the detachment commander's report. Everybody's had a copy of the detachment commander's report to review, and given the timelines, I know it's 10:30, so we'll have to try and focus in on the questions that we want to talk to Inspector Anderson about. But Inspector Anderson, if you want to take over here and give us the review and the highlights.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, with keeping in time in mind, I know there's a number of different items on the agenda still. Do we just want to move to a Q&A on this report? Everything's detailed in there if you wish, as a board.
Is everybody comfortable with that? I think so. Yes, that'd be great. So let's open it up then to the discussion with Inspector Anderson. I don't know if there's anything in specific that you'd like to just highlight for our information without going through the entire report, or if any of our members have specific questions. I'm sure they do. Councillor Pierce, I can count on you to kick us off.
Sorry about that. These are all good questions. So, well, not that all my questions are good. Anyway, page 10 of the report, when it talks about the school resource officers, there's been a lot of discussion around town, and a lot of discussion in council, and a lot of discussion in your reports here regarding, I'm speaking specifically to the students at the high school with the large groups and that sort of stuff. I think it's great that we've worked as a county and the OPP and the school board and stuff like that to try and do what we can to disperse them. Good update in the communication you have here. I'm just wondering how that's progressing. Do we think we're winning this battle? Again, from what I see the times that I do go past the school, whether it's lunchtime or stuff like that, there still appears to be large groups together. I'm just curious how communications and discussions have gone on that.
And what I might do, because I know Staff Sergeant Hampson is more up to date on the operations side of things, but I know there's been even more things since I've submitted this report as well. So I know Andrew's having some issues with his bandwidth there, but we'll see if he can run with it here.
Good morning, everybody. Bear with me while I get over some technical glitches here. I've been in and out of the meeting. We just learned yesterday the proposal to have the staggered lunch periods at the Paris District High School, which we were told was going to go ahead starting yesterday with the start of the new quadmester. Due to a series of complaints from parents of the students, the school has overturned their decision and they're remaining with a single lunch period for this quadmester. Again, we just learned of that yesterday. We are set up to go ahead with the positive ticketing, giving out the coupons for various different restaurants in the area to students who are properly wearing their PPE and social distancing. However, that has not launched yet, as we're waiting for bylaw to become engaged with it. Again, I learned of this yesterday, that it hadn't gone live, as they were waiting to come up with a name for the initiative at the bylaw end, and they wouldn't participate until that was agreed upon. That's where we are. We still have our school resource officer patrolling during the lunch periods. They have come up with a suitable alternative for the smoking area, which was agreeable with the Board of Health and with the school board itself, for use of a smoking area that keeps the students away from the heavy traffic area of smoking out in front of the school. So that's pretty much where we're at with that. As I said, we do have an officer up there during the meal periods and break periods every day, trying to monitor the groups and getting them move along. And he's also been in communication with McDonald's and Tim Hortons and a couple of the other restaurants that are up in the area to try and come up with strategies to keep the kids' distance well on their properties.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you and I can follow up with bylaw to understand where the delay is there, but I don't like the sounds of that. If we can help that out, then that's perfect. So thank you for that. My next question, if I could, is on page 11 when it comes to the community focused patrols. Appreciate the fact of the input that you've received there, and the focus patrols you've got broken down by platoons and stuff like that. Now I know these didn't get to you until probably the 5th, 6th, 7th of November. We're now the 17th of November. Is this particular one, even though it's stated for the November focus patrol, is it going to go beyond that, or are we cutting it off on the 30th?
The issue that we have is we have our festive ride program starting at the end of November.
Okay. So
there will be resources that we have to dedicate to prioritize that festive ride program. So what we'll do is we'll keep it running, and I think festive ride, I think it starts, I have November 21st, festive ride starts. So what we'll do is we'll overlap festive ride and the community patrols until the end of November, Councillor Pierce, but I really don't think resource-wise that even if we kept those focus patrols open, that festive ride season will take priority at that point.
And just a note on that, Councillor Pierce, I think we learned, Nancy, myself, Inspector Anderson, we learned some lessons in that process of soliciting feedback. So should there be additional times in 2021 where we want to solicit that feedback, we know we need to build more lead time into that process.
Right. Okay. And then I wondered if that was going to conflict with other patrols and stuff like that. I'm wondering if we could just kind of keep that short list, I'll call it, in mind for when we gear back up into 2021. That would be great. My final one, and it's again, this is great. Just with the new detachment move in, you guys got to be pretty excited now. We're down to what, less than a week before you move in there, so that's great. I'm just curious, is there anything that's jumping out at you? Oh my God, we're not going to be able to do this from a detachment point of view, or does everything seem to be falling in line now?
No, I think it's fair to say with this move, we're certainly pushing it forward sooner. It's not going to be perfect, is what I'm saying, because we're trying to get in from a small space to a large space, especially with the second wave of COVID.
Right.
More of a health and safety issue. So we've been running a joint committee between the county, OPP facilities, IT between the county, all of the stakeholders that are involved in the move for probably about, I think it's been over a year, I think, Andrew. No, we don't see any major hurdles. There will be hiccups, absolutely, 100%. And we've already made arrangements to remain fully operational. So people doing calls for service, anything else, nothing will appear different for them, because we'll be functioning through another neighboring detachment for everything that we need for that period of the switchover. So everything will be operations as normal, except for the mad rush behind the scenes trying to physically move between one location and another. But we don't anticipate anything at this point in time preventing that move, no.
Fantastic. And then, so just for clarification, if I could, when we're into the new facility, my understanding here, correct me if I'm wrong, is the process is going to be, we're going to do like a soft opening, so to speak, and then sometime when the weather gets better, after in the springtime of 2021 or summertime of 2021, is when we'll plan to have the grand opening. Is that a fair statement?
And what I'll do is I'll defer perhaps to Robin on that, but that's my understanding. Absolutely, Councillor Pierce. Yeah, it is just to be clear, because it is a county building and a county build, the OPP were there to fully support and coordinate anything that the county wants, but it's really the county's drive and an initiative on the ceremonies that go around that building opening. And COVID, of course, complicates that even more for us.
True enough.
Robin, was there anything to add to that, or?
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, I do have a little information on that I'll provide in my detachment update.
Okay.
Thanks, folks.
Was there other questions for Inspector Anderson? Member Brown? Oh, you're on mute. No questions?
No questions, sorry.
Just quickly, Inspector Anderson, the media news portal, is that something that you subscribe to get the news releases on? I noticed that there was 22 news releases uploaded to the portal, and is that something that anybody can just sign up to receive, or is that a media credentials only, or?
Yeah, it's the latter, Madam Chair. It's run through our general headquarters. So media outlets and people who are approved through the OPP have access to that media portal. I know moving forward, when we progress to going live with our website on the OPP County page, we will be having a media page there that we will post media releases that are agreeable to the county to put on their platform.
Do we know how that's progressing, the county OPP page, in terms of getting that launched?
In all honesty, the county has been full push ahead on it. The issue that we've had on our end with COVID and administrative resources here and being physically here at the detachment has put a delay on our end. So any delay that we've had with that is on our end. The county's been more than fantastic with getting things built up. So we're addressing that right now with our resources through our detachment.
I guess the question I had about the news releases is sometimes you see on social media the various news releases, but they're not always things that have been shared on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. So just curious to know how you could stay abreast of some of the news and updates that get posted. And if that's going to be on our new web page, then as PSB members, we can check there, but we wouldn't have the media credentials necessarily to be qualified for the news release portal. So I wasn't sure how that was gonna work.
Yes, Madam Chair, and that's been one of the issues that we've been talking about, is that communication with the community so that they are aware. The unfortunate piece is with the OPP media portal, we put all of our media releases on there. It's up to the media outlets what they want to carry or what they want to distribute or disseminate through their readership. So we're kind of at their mercy on the media end. But having said that, also in my report, our media positions, our school resource officer, our community mobilization officer, they are all positions that are on rotational assignment. That is that they are to be refreshed within certain periods of time, whatever the detachment commander deems that contract to be. So all of our rotational assignments in relation to those commodities are up in February. So we will be running an expression of interest by the end of the year for those positions coming up into to February to refresh those positions. And we're also looking at expanding it. Right now, we have 2 officers performing the role of community mobilization, community services, school resource officer and media officer, which is a lot of hats to wear at once. So what we're looking at is expanding that unit from 2 people to 3 people with more of a focus on the media side as well, with that communications goal that we've talked about in the past.
You talked about it earlier about the 911 calls and the efficiencies that have been gained with how they streamline that. So obviously, I think your numbers were 181 calls responded to so far compared to 939. That's a significant savings in time. Is that something that we can expect, like moving forward, that would be a trend that we would see then for the detachment with that new initiative?
The Provincial Communications Center has every intention on continuing with that, yes. So we would see that continue into the future. And I know there's a number of other projects that they're looking at, creating frontline efficiencies, and that they have created. One of the programs that we're fairly excited about coming in is e-ticketing. So it's actually a process where everything is electronic and electronically submitted to the courts. So an officer would conduct a vehicle stop. They would be able to swipe the driver's license, all the particulars and everything else would be auto-populated, and a ticket or a warning paper for each would be printed out. So it will decrease the amount of time that it takes an officer to actually physically write that out currently, and with the swiping, and it'll automatically generate as well an occurrence through our records management system, so that every traffic stop will be recorded. That is, if I stop someone now in Brant County and they continue on their travels and get stopped in London again, the officer that stops that person in London will immediately know that that person's already was just stopped in Brant County and issued either a warning or a ticket, and can choose what their enforcement option is going to be. The other nice thing from that system will be everything, because it's generating an occurrence every time we conduct a traffic stop. There'll be a latitude and longitude associated to it, which will enable us to map all of our enforcement within a certain area. And of course, that will be overlaid, because we want the majority of our enforcement to be in high collision areas or problem areas that we have. So we'll be able to see if those two are actually meshing up, which is what we want to see. So there's a number of other efficiencies that are going to be coming up, trying to decrease that amount of time for the frontline officer.
Guess my last question was just on the statistics that you shared about mental health incidents increasing this October 2020 versus 2019, and domestic incidents decreasing, which is, I guess, just looking at, you know, your insight into are the resources. We talked a little bit about COVID and mental health and where that's going to go with the numbers and the calls. Are you seeing any kind of trends there with the mental health calls that you're receiving and having the resources that you need to respond?
With the mental health calls for service, the big goal that we're all trying to get to, especially with our frontline MCERT programs and COAST programs, is trying to move people into support through other community stakeholders as opposed to becoming a crisis call for police. Because everyone is going to be better served having those support services and a plan in place for mental health crisis rather than waiting for a police intervention or a 911 intervention. Our resources right now that we have are all back in with our mental health clinicians, especially in relation to the grant that we have. And I know there's conversations on board currently in relation to better supporting those services within the county through the Ministry of Health as well as our ministry. So I look forward to some announcements in relation to that moving on, but we're probably in the best position that we've been in the county in relation to police and frontline mental health services, with two fully functional mental health clinicians that we have currently with us, where it's normally only one. And we're looking at doing a lot more proactive work with those instead of being 100% reactive. There's a lot of work that can be done. As you see, 40 to 45% of our mental health calls for service are young people. So I think there's a lot more work that we can do proactively in relation to grades 6, 7, 8, and the high schools as well. So there's a lot on our plate moving forward, a lot of discussions on the go right now. What we are seeing is we aren't necessarily seeing a huge increase in our calls for service, but the severity of those calls, so the attempt suicides and the threats for attempt suicide, we see greatly enhanced. So the severity of the calls that we're receiving are much more concerning and much more crisis related than what we saw before.
Any other questions for Inspector Anderson? Member Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the Inspector. I've went over your report, and I've seen in a couple of areas some stats that have interested me. The foot patrols is showing that you're up by 52%. I think this is great community visibility, and it's something that the councillors have asked for on a regular basis. Your daily activity reports have shown a diversified approach, much more so than 2019, which I think has given us great public exposure and positive response again from the councillors and the public at large. The zone patrol hours for October of 2019 versus 2020, they're down very significantly. You get them down 26% or over 1,000 hours. Is there a reason?
Let me try to find the graph here.
7A. I just lost it.
Are you talking about the zone patrol hours?
Correct.
7A. For October, yeah, they were showing down 26% for October, but we're up almost 8% for the year. In relation to October, we had a number of different courses that were on hold during COVID, as well as training. So officers normally go to 4 days of annual training every year. So at the beginning of October, all that training was rescheduled. So we have to get all of our officers in between October and December to get all of that training that we normally have a year to do. So you'll see significant reductions with that. There's also certain courses and training that officers have that need to be done on a yearly basis outside of that block training that we call it. And to meet certain ministry guidelines, that also has to be done by the end of the year. So you would see a lot of people between October, November, and December that are going to, our training component is going to be playing catch up to what we saw with the increase over the April, May, June, July months that we had, if that makes sense.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions for Inspector Anderson? All good questions so far. Good discussion. Seeing none. Thank you, Inspector Anderson, for that report and the feedback on the questions. So we also have the false alarms summary, which I believe was on page 9 of the original agenda package, perhaps 7B is the item number. Any discussion there required, or we shall proceed to a motion to receive both the detachment commander's report and the false alarms report for information. Oh, sorry, yes.
And Madam Chair, I just wanted to mention, because we did have a follow-up from the last meeting, we've redone our analysis of the false alarms. If you remember last year, we did one and we had a number of businesses and locations that we had identified as frequent false alarm locations. We had our community street crimes unit actually go out and do an engagement with each one of those businesses, updating their key holder information and giving them some suggestions. When we did our new analysis this year, we've identified a new list. So we'll be redoing that. Our community street crimes is affecting that as we speak. But the good thing from that is none of the top 10 that were on the list last year were on the list this year. So it does appear that engagement that our community street crimes unit is having with those locations is definitely working. So I just wanted to put that in under the false alarms here.
That's great news. That's good to hear. Anything additional on the false alarms report that was submitted? Seeing none, look for a motion to receive both reports for information. Member Brown and seconded by Mayor Bailey. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, moving on to communications, we've received none, so that was an easy item to stroke off the agenda. Other business, Inspector Anderson would like to discuss the East Zone Extended Services Office.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to bring this up because we have had, we just did meetings with all of our shifts. I try to do them twice a year. And this was a topic that came up from our frontline members, just inquiring as to the status of an extended service office in East Zone. I know the one that we had is no longer there. And we were waiting for, I believe the last plan was to have an office in the new Canesville Community Center that was going to be being built. And I know that's, I don't know if that's been delayed or what the plans are. So I just wanted to bring it up to the Police Service Board. Just our officers are asking for a location, if possible, in East, whether to bridge to a full-time location. And I think it's fair to say for them that East is probably one of the locations that is the most handy for them to have, just because of the distance from the detachment. So I just wanted to bring it just bring it forward and make it a live issue here.
Mayor Bailey?
We had a meeting on the Canesville new build, and we went through with the architect sort of the final stages of space and things like that. And there definitely is an OPP office or satellite station there, right by the front door on the right-hand side, going into the main hall. So you will have a location there.
And just through you, Madam Chair, is there any timeline for that or any appetite to have a location that would bridge us over until that build or until that location is up and running?
Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, I could bring that forward if you want. I could talk to staff about that. Our build was delayed, obviously, for COVID and things like that. So plus we had to rejig some space, but we are really close to having the final footprint of the build confirmed. So if you need space now, we could probably find you something. I didn't realize you were that anxious to get out there. So I will bring that. I'll talk to staff this afternoon.
Yeah, and the only reason, Mayor Bailey, I really bring it up is because of those meetings that we have. And I don't think I realized how much our officers miss that ESO out there. So yeah, that's more member driven than driven for myself.
Actually, I'll let the chair, I'll let Jennifer reach out to staff to put that together for you.
Sounds good. An action item there that will reach out with regards to a temporary location for an ESO while the Canesville new build is in process. Is that the direction, everybody? Okay. Was that everything on that item, Inspector Anderson?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Then next item was bylaw enforcement.
So Madam Chair, through you, again, this was just a topic I just wanted to update the Police Service Board on, as I've had discussions with the CAO, with Michael Bradley. In our OPP contract, it's supposed to be between the county and the detachment commander to review the bylaws that the OPP will be assisting the county with in that upcoming year. So we have that discussion on the go right now so that we'll have an agreement come the beginning of January in relation to what bylaws the OPP will be assisting with. I know one concern on our end is that there does seem to be a little bit of mission creep with the expectation of what bylaws that the OPP are assisting with and the best resource dedication for us in relation to that. An example would be private property parking issues and things of that nature. So we'll be meeting with the county just as an update to have a clear understanding of what the county will be looking after with bylaws and what we will be.
Any follow-up questions on that, folks? Thanks for the update on that, Inspector Anderson. You'll let us know how that goes with your discussions, and have that in place is a good idea for January 1st. The next item on the agenda was recircling on the information sharing protocol. Nancy shared that with us. It was a follow-up to our training session, and it was created before Mayor Bailey was on police service, but the rest of us, the four of us, weren't here. And I asked Nancy to circulate it to us so that we were aware of what had already been done before us, and if there needed to be any updates to it or revisions, given some of the work we've been doing to communicate with council, or this is specific to the annual report and the business plan and what's required. But we can certainly table it as well today, looking at the timelines for the agenda. But I wanted to have a discussion about that to make sure that it was relevant to what I think it was done in 2015. So I just want to make sure it was still relevant, and if needed to have any amendments, that we could pursue those. What's the wish of everybody? Leave it as is for now, Mayor Bailey?
You can leave it as it is for now, but I don't know that just because we did it some way before now that you can't tell us what you would like done now, because it's a whole different world now than it was back then. You have different players and you have different situations. I think that maybe if you're not comfortable with some of the ways we were doing it before you, maybe you should come up with some ideas that you think would be more, would be more.
Sure. How about if I could suggest that myself and Vice Chair Brown can put our heads together, and we'll come back either with some recommendations or a recommendation of status quo, depending on what we come up with. But we can come back to the next board meeting with that discussion. Mayor Bailey, thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, sometimes just because we've done it for 20 years doesn't make it right.
Nancy, do we need a motion on that to direct Jim and I to do that? Just agreed that we've done it? Sorry.
Yeah, we can just come back at the next meeting and you guys can review it and propose it then.
Okay, that's great. Jim, you're okay with being voluntold on that? All right, so then the update section, Robin has an update for us on the detachment, the new detachment.
So the standalone units of the in the OPP have started to transition to the new building, mainly the crime unit. The building is undergoing a deep clean this week, with moving in starting next Monday, the majority occurring Tuesday and finishing on Wednesday. The following week, a small ribbon cutting ceremony is planned. Tentative scheduled date is December 1st, which should be confirmed shortly, with a small group. So that should include the mayor, Lisa, Jennifer, a reverend, and a native to bless the land. Then a larger celebration is being planned for May of 2021. There's a report going on the celebratory plans going to council next week. And that's it.
That answer, I think there was a question earlier. Did that answer the question? To Council Pierce? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Mayor Bailey?
I think we're going to not have the land dedication this year. I think it's just going to be the Reverend, myself, Jennifer, and the inspector.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Well, that's exciting that we'll be able to get everybody into the new building, and hopefully the members will have a little bit more breathing room and be able to function. It'd be nice to take that tarp or paper or whatever that is off the OPP sign there and officially make that operational. That'll be nice to see. Okay, Councillor Pierce?
If I could, and this is through you to the inspector. I know in discussions before with the OPP, the scheduling of getting people in for stuff like that takes a long time. So I'm not sure if we've got a specific date in May, Robin, that this is going to happen, so the inspector can kind of drop that seed into headquarters to say, hey, this is our date type thing.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not sure if a specific date is determined at this point, but I can find out.
And Madam Chair, I might be able to provide some insight on that. I've been speaking to Cindy Stevenson. So when we dismantled the detachment building committee that Mayor Bailey was chairing during the build, the agreement was that we were going to stand up a committee for the ceremonies surrounding the opening of the building. So my understanding is now that those committee members are now talking and in the planning process for those upcoming ceremonies as well.
That's great news. Okay, Councillor Pierce, is there anything from council that you'd like to share or update us on?
Not at this point, not since the last we met anyway.
And you'll follow up then with council, or somebody will follow up in terms of getting the billing model presentation for council.
Yeah, I think that'd be prudent. Yep.
Marty's not here today, obviously, so no updates on Zone 4. I'm not sure how active they are right now, but we'll defer that till Marty's able to join us again. And also, as we noted on the agenda, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Planning Committee has been suspended with COVID. We're hoping to start that committee back up in January, given the timeliness of the topics that we want to be able to research and get the pulse of the community. But that remains to be seen with the direction from council and from others in terms of staff resources for those committees. I don't have a lot to update you on other than, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mayor Bailey.
You know what, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you for everything you're doing, even just in St. George with your kids, with your chalk drawings and your presence, and just everything you're doing, I guess just as a citizen, but I guess you're always thinking about safety and well-being. What you're doing is very special and very much appreciated by so many people. I hear about it every day, so thank you for that. I don't know which hat you're wearing when you're chalking up my sidewalk, but thanks for doing it, and do it as often as you like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. That hat happens to be the Girl Guide hat in that particular case. Yes, I appreciate the feedback. It's always nice to hear that. I just wanted to let you know that I worked with Inspector Anderson. I guess this was the first time that this was an option, but Inspector Anderson's been working on the 2020-2022 action plan, which was delayed with COVID, but she's since had to restart that process quite quickly. We were invited as the Police Service Board and as chair to also have a message in the action plan, and along with the detachment commander. So I did submit, and I will send to you guys for your reference. I did submit some words, some not so sure wise words, but some words that Inspector Anderson included in that. So that was great that I felt it was important to do that in line with our strategic priorities as a board in terms of our extended communication and reaching out. So hopefully that's in line with everybody else's thoughts. And other than that, I don't have any other additional updates as chair. As you know, there's always lots going on with this group, so I'm just trying to stay abreast of everything. In the 2020 priorities, Marty wanted to have included. He's not here today, but I know he wanted to recircle our progress that we've made on the board's priorities, not the OPP's action plan, but the board's priorities that we came up with back late February, which seems like an eternity now. Back late February, he wanted to have some discussions in terms of benchmarking where we're at with things. I know we talked about Inspector Anderson at one point, that publication that we were going to do to the community, and I wonder, I don't know, I don't want to speak for Marty, but I know he asked me where we were at with that, and I know we've had some delays with COVID, and wondering how we would expedite that for 2021, because maybe that's a great opportunity to communicate with the citizens of Brant on all the different things that have been happening throughout this time as well. Not sure what else Marty wanted to discuss there, but that was what he had communicated to me. Inspector Anderson.
Yeah, and with that publication, I think the timing of it would be fantastic to be able to have something out. I think it's just going to be such a, not wanting to speak for the county, but a resource dependent on the county and everything that they're dealing with right now with COVID and the color schemes, and they really have a lot on their plate currently, and they're doing a fantastic job of it. So I would think that would be the most limiting for us in relation to that publication. Although the timing might be fantastic, I don't think it would be the best timing for the county. Again, not wanting to speak for them, but they do have a lot on their plate.
I think we're all aware of where case numbers are going here in December, or where they could possibly go, God forbid. But you know, I do agree with you, Inspector Anderson, but perhaps we recircle this in early January to see where we're at with things, and maybe make a plan for that, an action plan for that publication once we get through December and into January. And I don't know, Councillor Pierce, Mayor Bailey, I don't want to speak for the county resources either, but appreciate that you and your staff are pretty busy at this time, as well as along with our detachment staff dealing with COVID related issues. that makes sense to recircle that in January then.
That would be great. If you could wait that long, that'd be great.
Mhm.
All right. So then I'm not sure if there's anything that Inspector Anderson, is there anything that you would need to go in camera for today?
No, we don't have anything, to be quite honest. Our lives are surrounding the move right now, so we're quite preoccupied with that. So no, nothing for in camera.
That's great. So we won't have any in camera today. We do have a possibility of another delegation next meeting from St. Leonard's. Inspector Anderson had connected with us on that. Nancy will confirm whether that's going to happen or not, some of their programming on the mental health side of things. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, December 15th. And again, it'll be electronic participation again. We're getting good at this Zoom process, so that's great news. Was there, without any further ado, 11:11. Thanks, John, Councillor Pierce, for sticking around a little bit longer here with your deadline.
No worries. I'm on a
great.
meeting on the other one anyway, so it's good.
So if there's no other business or other items you wish to discuss, I'm looking for someone to move adjournment of the meeting. Councillor Pierce. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you very much, everybody, for all your hard work.